Have you ever wondered why some people seem to overcome every challenge and rise higher, while others, no matter how hard they try, stay stuck in the same place? The difference is not luck. It is not talent either. It is mindset. Those quiet thoughts that live inside our minds, the ones that shape how we see ourselves and the world around us. Throughout history, this truth has been proven through the lives of people who changed the world. Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos. They all started with just one idea, one belief, one image that existed in their minds long before it became reality. Napoleon Hill once said, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." But if that is true, why are so many people still unable to succeed? Is it because they never dared to dream big enough? Or because they never truly believed they could become more? Today, you will hear the story of a man, someone who seemed to have nothing, but discovered the secret to changing his entire life, simply by changing the way he thought about himself. So stay until the end of this story, because it might just change the way you see yourself forever. At an old train station, where the trains passed by every day carrying thousands of different lives, there lived a man who quietly stayed in the shadowed corner of the platform. People called him a beggar, a name so familiar that no one cared to ask what story lay behind it. Day after day, he survived on the pity of hurried passengers. A few coins, a sympathetic glance, and then everyone went on with their own journey, while he remained there surrounded by the crowd, yet completely alone. He could not remember when this life began. All he knew was that every morning he would sit beside a rusted metal pole, reach out his hands, and wait. No one ever looked at him for long, and he no longer dared to look at anyone with hope. But one morning, just like any other, someone different appeared in the crowd. He wore a neat suit and walked with the confident stride of someone who was used to success. Just one glance, and the beggar knew. This was a man of wealth, of status, of power. A tiny spark of hope flickered inside him. If I ask this man, I might get more than I usually do. He stood up, stepped closer, his hands trembling as he reached out. But just as he expected to receive a few coins, the man stopped, looked straight into his eyes, and asked, "Do you only know how to receive? Have you ever tried giving anything?" Time seemed to freeze. The beggar went silent. No one had ever asked him that before. And maybe he had never asked himself that question either. The businessman's words cut through the silence in his mind. "Do you only know how to receive? Have you ever tried giving anything?" In that moment, the noise of the station seemed to fade away. The beggar stood still, his eyes wide open, filled with confusion and surprise. No one had ever spoken to him like that, with a calm voice, yet sharp and clear. "Sir," he said softly, "I am just a beggar. I live on the mercy of others. What could I possibly give?" The businessman smiled gently, not a mocking smile, but one of understanding. "If you believe you have nothing to give, then you do not have the right to receive anything either. I believe in exchange, not pity. When you are able to offer something to others, the world will begin to offer something back to you." With that, he turned around and stepped onto the departing train. The sound of metal wheels screeching on the tracks echoed through the air, leaving behind a man standing motionless, like a statue. The beggar felt something break open inside his heart. All those years, he had lived like a shadow, waiting, receiving, never realizing he could also give. That night, he could not sleep. Those words kept echoing in his mind. If you want to receive, you must first learn to give. He looked at his calloused hands empty, poor, but still full of life. Then he looked around his shabby little room, a place he had grown used to, filled with darkness and silence. A question repeated itself in his mind, clearer than ever before. Do I really have nothing to give? That was the very first moment, small, but powerful enough to light a spark in his mind. A spark that signaled his life was about to change. The night felt endlessly long. The beggar lay still, staring blankly at the ceiling. From far away, the sound of a train whistle echoed through the darkness, reminding him of the meeting that had shaken his heart that very morning. He had always believed his fate was already written, to be born poor, live poor, and quietly disappear from this world. But now, with just one sentence, that belief had started to crack. If you want to receive, you must first learn to give. That sentence echoed in his mind like a voice that refused to fade. It frightened him, yet awakened him at the same time. He asked himself, what can I possibly give? A man with nothing, can he offer anything to anyone? He looked down at his cracked hands, his tired feet. The only thing he still had left was himself. And maybe that was already a beginning. In the days that followed, he stopped holding out his hand for money. Instead, he sat quietly, watching people. The hurried travelers passing by, the children laughing near the platform, the wildflowers blooming by the tracks. Everything he once thought meaningless now seemed full of life. One afternoon, as the sun was beginning to set, he noticed a small patch of flowers swaying gently in the wind. Their fragile, colorful petals had grown out of the dusty gravel. They had nothing, yet they dared to bloom brightly, as if whispering to him, even the smallest among us can still give something beautiful. And at that moment, a thought flashed in his mind, clear, powerful, and completely unlike anything he had ever thought before. If I cannot give money, maybe I can give happiness. An idea was born in silence, small but strong enough to change his life forever. The next morning, the station was just as noisy as usual. Voices, the sound of metal wheels grinding on the rails, and somewhere in the distance, the long cry of a train whistle fading into the wind. The beggar was still sitting in his usual spot, but something inside him was different. Gone was the emptiness. In its place was a growing thought, like a seed just breaking through the soil. His eyes rested on the wildflowers by the tracks, tiny but radiant, stretching toward the light through dust and noise. They made him realize something simple yet profound. Value is not in how much you have, but in what you can give even the smallest thing. He stepped closer, bent down, and gently picked a few flowers, not to keep for himself, but to try something he had never done before to give. When a passenger tossed him a few coins, instead of just bowing in thanks, he smiled and handed the person a flower. The passenger looked surprised, then smiled softly, accepted it, and walked away. But that smile warmed the beggar's heart. He kept doing the same with others, and something strange began to happen. More and more people started to stop by. Some smiled, some spoke kindly to him, and many gave him more than before. For the first time in his life, he felt that he was not only receiving, but also giving something back. Not money, not material things, but a small feeling joy, connection, and gratitude. He realized that giving something away did not make him lose anything. Instead, it made him richer inside. That evening, as he sat looking at the few flowers left in his hand, he smiled softly. For the first time in many years, he no longer felt like a beggar. In his heart, a quiet voice whispered, "Maybe I have just found a reason to start over." From that day on, his life was never the same. The wildflowers, something no one had ever noticed before, had now become a bridge between him and the world. Every morning, as the sunlight touched the platform, he would go to the tracks, pick a few flowers, and take his usual seat with a gentle smile on his face. The regular passengers began to notice him. They no longer saw him as a beggar, but as someone who brought a small spark of joy into their busy lives. The beggar, now different, smiled every time he handed out a flower. In his eyes, there was no longer desperation, but dignity, gratitude, and a newfound confidence. He had come to understand something deeply true. When we begin to give, we are no longer poor, because true poverty is having nothing to share. And then, one morning, as he was busy handing flowers to passengers, his eyes suddenly stopped on a familiar face sitting inside the train. It was the businessman from that day long ago. His heart trembled. He quickly stepped forward, his face glowing with a bright smile. "Sir, today I have something to give. If you give me a little money, I will give you these flowers." The businessman looked at him and smiled. A gentle smile, so different from the first time they met. He handed the beggar some bills, took the flowers, and said, "Now I understand. You have truly learned the meaning of exchange. Today, you are no longer a beggar. You have become a true businessman." Those words lit up the beggar's heart. The train pulled away, its wheels humming softly on the rails, but the sound that remained in his mind was something else. The voice of confidence, of awakening. That night, as he sat with the last bouquet of flowers in his hands, he looked at them under the dim light and smiled. "I did not just trade flowers for money. I traded doubt for a new life." From that day forward, he no longer saw himself as a beggar. He became someone who offered value, someone who brought beauty into the world. And in that moment, he understood. Success is not about having a lot. It is about having the courage to start with something small. That night, the station was empty. Dim yellow light stretched along the railway, shining softly on the old man's face, aged yet glowing. In his hands were only a few flowers left, half of them already wilted, but to him, they were still as beautiful as the first day. He sat there for a long time, silent in the stillness of the night, thinking about the words the businessman had said. "Today, you are no longer a beggar." Those words still echoed through the darkness, so warm, so real, that his heart trembled slightly. For so many years, he had lived believing he had nothing, that life had closed its doors on him forever. But now he realized, no one could ever close that door except himself. "I have spent too many years waiting for someone to save me, and I forgot that I was the one holding the key." He stood up and took a deep breath. The night wind blew through his silver hair, carrying the scent of wildflowers and train smoke. But this time, it felt different. He no longer saw the station as a prison, but as the place that had awakened him. He looked toward the endless tracks, where trains kept leaving, one after another, carrying dreams and hopes of so many lives. And for the first time in his life, he thought, maybe I too deserve a new journey. The next morning, he packed his few belongings, a small amount of money he had saved, and a fresh bouquet of flowers. He left the station, a place that had once been the beginning of his despair, now becoming the starting point of a new life. No one knew where he went. They only knew that from that day on, the old beggar was never seen sitting in that corner of the platform again. But somewhere in the city, people began to notice an elderly man selling flowers with a gentle smile and warm, kind eyes. Each flower he sold carried not only fragrance, but also a story of belief, gratitude, and the power of giving. He was no longer the beggar he once was. He had become a creator of value, a man who rebuilt his life with his own two hands. 6 months later, it was a clear morning, sunlight streaming through the train windows, soft and golden, as if wrapping around stories waiting to be continued. The station was as crowded as ever. But among the rushing crowd, there was a man who stood out for his calm and poise. He wore a crisp suit, carried a leather briefcase, and walked with quiet confidence. It was the same businessman from before. When the train stopped, he stepped onto the platform and noticed a small shop at the corner of the street, decorated with bright, colorful bouquets, each flower arranged carefully, fresh and full of life, just like the man who sold them. Behind the counter was a familiar face. The old man, the beggar from years ago, was now busy wrapping flowers, his face glowing with warmth and kindness. His eyes were bright, no longer tired or filled with shame. The businessman stopped, frozen in surprise. He stepped closer and asked softly, "Excuse me, do I know you? You look so familiar." The florist looked up and smiled. "Perhaps you have forgotten. We met twice before. Once, when you refused to give me money, and another time, when you bought flowers from me." The businessman's eyes widened in astonishment. "My goodness, you are that beggar." The old man laughed, his eyes shining like the morning sun. "Yes, that was me. But now, I no longer ask anyone for anything. I am running this small flower shop, and today, I am opening a second one." The businessman smiled, his eyes filled with admiration and emotion. "I truly respect you. What helped you change so much?" The florist looked at him, his voice gentle yet full of gratitude. "It was you, sir. You taught me one of life's greatest truths, that we can only receive when we first learn to give. That day, I realized I had never truly been a beggar. I had always been a businessman. I just never had the courage to see myself that way." The businessman stood silent for a moment, then extended his hand. They shook hands this time, as equals, no longer giver and receiver, but two people sharing mutual respect and understanding. The train was about to depart. The businessman turned back, smiled deeply at the old man one last time. The old man stood framed by the colorful flowers of his shop, and behind him was a hand-painted sign that read, "Flower of Hope." The petals swayed gently in the breeze, as if whispering to everyone passing by, "When you change the way you see yourself, the world will change the way it sees you." The old man's life had changed, not because of magic, nor luck. It all began with one small thought, one single moment when he dared to look within and ask himself, "Who am I, really?" And perhaps, in that very moment, he did something most of us forget to do. He redefined himself. From someone who only knew how to receive, he learned to give. From someone who waited, he became someone who acted. And from a life once covered in darkness, he stepped into a journey of light and meaning. His story was never just about flowers or poverty. It was about the power of mindset, about how we cannot change the world around us until we first change the way we see ourselves. When you see yourself as small, you will live as someone small. But when you believe that there is still greatness within you, you will lift your head high and walk toward it with purpose. Because greatness does not begin with wealth or fame. It begins with how you think every single day. And if today you feel stuck, remember this: one right thought is enough to change your entire life. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, share what you have learned, and send this story to someone you believe might need a spark of hope. Because who knows, just one flower, one message, or one simple story could change someone's life forever.